outside. Then I try to change it. Okay, then we go here. So let me arrange a bit the windows because we are so much today, luckily. So this topic of youngsters taking part in projects in a safe way is something that for me personally is a great uh, of great importance. Because in the past 20 years, I experienced many situations where I thought that the youngsters are actually not so safe or things could have been done better. I believe that if you are working with youngsters yourself, then if you reflect on yourself, then you can also recall certain situations where you could have felt that maybe some things could have done better or in a different way. So when we started this project, we made research which was focusing on the experiences of youngsters and youth workers as well, related to safety. So now I'm going to present like the outcomes of this research because this was our starting point. Rather soon, we figured out that to talk about safe youth work is not so easy. And it's not easy for different reasons because it's rather a complex situation and task in our world. The first one is that we have different understanding on youth work. What do we consider youth work? It can be different by age, like what are youngsters? Does it start at the age of 14 with underage or starts it at 18 where they are not underage anymore? Or it could be like whether it's happening in a school or some formal education system or in a youth camp. And also there is really different understanding on youth work by culture and countries as well. So yesterday I checked that we had applicants from more than 70 countries for this conference. So I believe that even if we would just simply start talking about like what is your opinion on youth work, we would have really, really different opinions about it. The second difficulty when discussing this matter is safety. Because safety is really also really different. Like when we use the word safety, it has different meaning for each and every one of us. It is also depends on the culture, the country, but it also depends on generations. I am close to 50 years old, and when I was a youngster, like I could travel on my own, and at the age of 6, I would send to the shop to do the shopping and so on. Now, in Hungary, now my 6 years old kid would not go to the shop on her own anymore. Yeah? So, even by generation, the understanding of safety and what do we mean, like to provide a safe environment, is very different. The third topic, which makes this discussion really hard, is that as professionals, it is really hard to reflect on personal practices and admit when we are making mistakes. Because most of us working with other human beings, we want to provide them with safety. But we all have blind spots. Whether we like it or we don't like it, they are there. Yeah? But it is really difficult to admit when we made mistakes. It's really difficult to look into the mirror and be honest about ourselves and our mistakes. And especially if it's in a blind spot, then many times we are not even aware of it that we made a mistake. So it makes it very difficult. And finally, for the youngsters, it's difficult to actually even understand whether they are in a safe position or not. because they are not educated, or maybe they come from a background where safety was never given to them. So for them to actually understand whether they are in a safe situation or not can be really challenging. And if we are talking about youngsters who have special needs or who come from war zones or who come from a social background which is rather difficult, then they have even more challenges to know whether they are safe or not. So then it's important that you are aware that this is actually a very difficult discussion to have. But still, safety is rather important because if there is no safe situation, then there is no learning going to happen. And as youth workers, maybe we can agree on one thing. This is that if we are youth workers and we are working with youngsters, somehow our aim is to educate them, to help them grow. The method, the context, everything can be really different. But maybe this aim, like education and developing, helping them to develop themselves, can be a common ground. But this is not possible if they don't feel safe, because then they are simply not able to learn, to comprehend anything new. So in our project, very simply put, we revealed one thing, that physical and emotional safety are equally important. Even so, physical safety is something that at times people do think about, and emotional safety is something which is many times neglected or not taken care of properly. Here I want to make it very clear that in our project we did not focus on digital safety. This was not our focus of work, because primarily we focused on situations which are happening in face-to-face youth work, so not online or digital youth work. So everything we are going to share is not related to digital safety. Yeah. So how come that it's more difficult to provide emotionally safe places? Because physical safety has more obvious, more clear, more understandable conditions. Yeah, to have a first aid box or to have a first aid training is something that we might think of. But emotional safety lacks of concrete protocols and trainings concerning youth workers. So then it makes it even more challenging. Even so, with having the COVID, which was like a global experience for all of us, somehow there started the attention shifting also towards emotional and mental safety and protocols. So this is a change which started to happen, but somehow most of the times it was related to COVID and after COVID effect. Though emotional safety and psychologically difficult situations are present in youth work, no matter if there is COVID or there is no COVID, they are there. Yeah. I already said about the digital youth work, which is also having some kind of attention and research, and there are steps in that field. Because youth workers believe that there is this instrument like the digital space or the online sphere, which needs like special guidance and training. But actually, the same should apply also to in-person youth work. Yeah. We also find it super important to say that holistic safety approach is essential, because actually the best would be if different type of professionals could collaborate when working with youngsters, because we have different expertise. A youth worker cannot be in charge of mental health of the youngsters if the youth worker has no education in psychology, mental health, or psychiatry. Then they simply do not have the skills to work as a therapist, and they should not do this work. But still, they might face situation with the youngsters where this kind of support would be essential. So simply put, what do we mean by physical and emotional safety? Because this was a kind of division in our research and in our whole work. So physical safety belongs to the safe space management, emergency protocols, boundary awareness, for example, just to name few. And emotional safety belongs more to acceptance or trauma-sensitive approach, or simply to have an environment which is non-judgmental. If you think of your own type of work, what you do, then if you think of like different situations or scenarios which already happened with you or around you, and if you ask questions to yourself simply like, I don't know, is the room really safe where I do my group activities? Or was I really attentive to certain traumas that the youngsters might have who come to my youth club, for example? So this is a starting point, how you can enter this course. So the international research we did consisted of different steps because we really wanted to have an honest information and data. We also involved in the research youngsters and professionals because we think like both parties have things to say. And that was like that. Youngsters did actually share many things which at points were really disturbing to hear. And professionals shared equally from their perspective, which could be also difficult to hear at times. Our instruments were desk research, online questionnaire, focus group, roundtable discussions, and fieldwork equally. And for example, in the roundtable discussions, we had sessions with only professionals, with only youngsters, and we had sessions also where both youngsters and professionals were present. But what did we found out was really troublesome. Actually, more than half of the youngsters, 64% of the youngsters, reported that they were exposed to different type of dangers while participating in certain youth activities. This is the percentage of the online research. The other instruments that we used for research actually showed even a bigger number. Now, I believe this is really not okay. Even so, I have to say that danger, we did not qualify it. So it could be something like from breaking a leg during an activity until to being a victim of sexual abuse. So it is a really broad range of danger that we are talking here. But I believe none of them is okay. So we have a publication and you will have a chance to read it through. So here I'm only presenting very briefly our findings, and I try to put it into some key points and key issues for your understanding. So one issue is that the practices concerning providing safety for youngsters are really scattered. So even if there are like good examples, like how you can educate youth workers, for instance, they are difficult to find and they might be present or available in certain country for certain groups. But on the European level, for sure, there is no like platform or material which would be really focusing on this and supporting youth workers or youngsters to have safety in the programs. We also figured out, which is not a big surprise, but still it is affecting safety in youth work a lot, that the regulation and the support is really, really different by country by country. In some countries, decision makers find it more important. So, for instance, it's part of the education of youth workers, while in other countries, there is no uh, centralized education of youth worker. So, actually, anyone can become a youth workers by stating that I am a youth worker and I start working with youngsters from today. But then it also means that these persons have no education, which could be fine, like to be a peer educator or an emerging youngster who wants to lead other youngsters is absolutely great and beautiful. But it also comes with a lot of risk concerning safety, both physical and emotional safety. So this can be a huge reason to have this big number of percentage of dangerous situations in youth work. Also, we could see, unfortunately, that the reported events during our research, they are not isolated incidents, but they come of a systemic issue of not having proper education, focus, support system, and so on concerning safety in youth work. This leads us that actually we should promote this topic on a broad level, on a national level, on a European level, and so on, to have like really sufficient changes. Also, it turned out that adolescents and young adults have a different psychological processes, and their brain is still developing and changing, and they are very vulnerable simply because of their age at most cases. But most of the youth workers are not aware of this, so they can also not even consider this factor. Also, we figured that most people think, most youth worker or professional would think that safety is a common sense, yeah, like you know how to take care of a safe situation. But this is not true. This is not true for physical safety either, but especially not true for psychological or mental safety. Because we like it or not, but that requires special education. And if I see a youngster who broke her arm during an activity, then it's rather clear to me that it's not my competence to put it in the cast or heal the broken arm, but I would take the youngster to the hospital. But equally, it should be obvious for us youth workers that if I see a depressed youngster, then I support that youngster also to get the proper help, which is not from me because I'm not trained psychologist or a psychiatrist. So we can say that this is not a common sense. We have to forget this attitude and start to educate ourselves. So, as I already mentioned before, that mental safety is something which is emerging because more and more young people are facing, for different reasons, psychological or mental difficulties. I'm not going there. Why is it happening? But I also want to mention here that my generation in Hungary would not be willing to share about their mental difficulties because of culture and education and how we were raised. I think personally that I appreciate youngsters these days who are willing to speak up and who are willing to share their vulnerability and difficulties. So it is also affecting, like why we see so many youngsters struggling with mental issues, simply because they are willing and open to speak up and to share their experiences, which might have happened in my generation as well, but we would hide it a lot more. Yeah. But with this, so youngsters are looking for solutions and support, but youth workers are not trained for it. I saw that today here with you guys, participants. I saw that some of you are psychologists, and I'm super happy that you are here and you are really ready and willing to listen to the other side of youth workers who we don't have this kind of education. Also, nowadays, the youngsters are more open to inclusion and they want to be included, but they are also more willing maybe to include others. And they also want to be recognized. So it means that they want safe and inclusive environments. And as a youth worker, it is our job to provide them with this. Also, as I said, that I believe that us as individuals, as professionals, we can decide whether we are going to focus more on safety, whether we are going to educate ourselves more on such kind of topics. But still, I do believe that a centralized action, a European level action, or a national level action would be also needed to really reach results. We also found that as youth workers are meeting the challenges, more and more youth workers comes to the understanding that I have to do something about my work, about my professional skills. So the self-awareness and the desire to set boundaries and to avoid burnout is a growing need within youth workers community. And as we found, like interdisciplinary cooperation would be a really, really great way to go. Also, we found that protocols and ethics are lacking, at least most in the countries that we looked into, though these should be like really basic tools to provide safe environment for the youngsters. So this was our research, and then we figured that what can we do about this? Because unfortunately we are not skilled and able to um, modify European legislation or legislations, for example, within our countries. But what we could do is that we phrased recommendations, like what do we believe, which are like the key instruments to have safer youth work. We also developed a training for youth workers, so it is possible to educate uh, professionals about this topic. And we also developed an online platform where someone can educate oneself through an online digital tool. So these were our responses to these challenges that the research showed. Now I'm going to very briefly introduce you these three instruments that we came up, but during the following time, this conference today, we are going to look deeper into these three. So the first one was the recommendations, which is aiming more at the youth worker and organizations and not on the European level, which you can read here. These are really only the summarizing of the recommendations. We have a publication where you can find and read more detailed versions of the recommendations and also the research itself, but it would take us like more days if I would go into details, so I'm not going to do that. Then we have the training, which I mentioned, which is a 5 days basic program. It is important that we aimed it as a basic training on safety for a youth worker. So it's not like something super complex. It's really like the starting point in our understanding. We tested it with more groups and with international teams, international participants, also the youth workers who came as participants for these training courses, but also the team who was delivering it was a really mixed team by country, by culture, but also by background of how much background they have in youth work or training, because we wanted to develop a material which could be delivered by trainers who are not like super experienced either. So we made a complete professional description of the full methodology and the program. So we made every possible step for each trainer or youth worker to have it as a material if they want to run a training course like this. So they have really all materials available to prepare themselves for this experience. This is a simple overview of the program. I'm not going into details of this. There is also a material about the training manual. It's a lengthy description, so there you can read a lot more if you want to. And finally, we have the online platform, which provides you with self-directed learning. So you can decide when you start, when you stop, and how far you go. It is going to be available in these 5 languages. It is interactive because our intention was to make it interesting and exciting. So instead of simply reading a document, our intention was to make it a bit more engaging. And it is possible for you to save the process and come back to it if you will. So you don't have to do it like in one sitting. This is simply a screenshot of the beginning of the website. So these were our answers to the challenges which I shared with you. And this is the end, actually, of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Krista.